Well, the big news this week, the big question I should say, to print or not to print to bail out the banks. And it looks like they decided to print lots of money to recapitalize the banks. And they got Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, to sign off. And she thinks it's a sensible investment. And she worries that if they don't make this investment, that you could have damage to the entire system, more damage to the entire system. If you're a capitalist, you let people live with their bad ideas, and they should have their assets taken away, and the bank should, basically not be bailed out. You should protect the depositors and not the banks. But what do I know? The IMF is down with this plan. The European Central Bank, the ECB, is down with this plan. Even the UK has started to print money. They started another round of quantitative easing in the UK. All that to say this, Meredith Whitney was interviewed also this week, and she still thinks, and her quote is, many European banks will fail. And she thinks that the governments will pick winners and losers, and the winners are going to be the people with all the derivative exposure. Those are the people that are going to be the winners, because if they go down, the whole system goes down. And despite what Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner said this week, that, no American banks aren't really in trouble. Really? Really, Secretary Geithner? There is $235 trillion in over-the-counter derivative leverage in just 4 U.S. banks. They've got $5 trillion of assets between them. That's a 50-to-1 leverage, and none of them are at risk. The number 5 bank, HSBC, on the list has a little less than $4 trillion in leverage. The number 4 bank, Goldman Sachs, is $47 trillion in leverage. There's no risk for U.S. banks? Yeah, there's lots of risk for U.S. banks. There is no question, and they're kicking the can down the road in Europe. And yes, the Federal Reserve will be involved as well with secret bailouts, because we can't audit them. But anyway, it looks like the economy will live to see another day. Ben Bernanke this week testified in front of a big congressional financial economic committee in Washington, D.C. And listen, he contradicted himself all over the place. On one side, he says that the banks are in better shape. Yet we've had 3 banks downgraded this year recently. He says that the economy's in better shape, and yet he says the recovery, the so-called recovery, is faltering. One contradiction after another. I mean, what is it? And then you know what his big plan is? Here's his big plan. His big plan is this: that U.S. politicians, Democrats and Republicans, have to get together and basically get the financial house of the United States in order. Yeah, there's no plan. There's no plan whatsoever. That's a total gridlock scenario. Next up, Occupy Wall Street, getting bigger and spreading across the country. And I've had a lot of comments about this. Some pro the protesters, some negative protesters. I'm always for the First Amendment, freedom of speech, because that's what I do for a living. But the comments against the protesters, some of them are justified. Hey, they want some crazy demands. They want all their college tuition wiped out. They want free education. They want some other crazy stuff. Now the unions, especially the public unions, are getting involved. I'm not really a fan of public unions because they don't really have profits to divide up. They just have taxpayers to go after. So I'm not really down with that. But on the other side, listen, free speech. Some of the things they're protesting about, and this is a big one, is that the crimes committed by Wall Street bankers have gone unpunished, and they've gotten bonuses. This is what moral hazard looks like. People are stepping up saying, hey, what about my bailout? What about my death? What about my, Bank of America this year had $200 billion in either salary mortgages, mortgage debt forgiven, or mortgages taken off their book. One bank, $200 billion. They're propping up Bank of America. That's what it looks like to me. I heard Jake Tapper from ABC News say that the protesters are upset. Some of the protesters, something to the effect of, some of the protesters are upset that their crimes were committed and nobody went to jail. Well, hello? This is too big to miss. 1,000 financial elites, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, 1,000 were successfully prosecuted, 10,000 were indicted during the savings and loan crisis. How many people have gone to jail this time? 0. Hey, Jake Tapper and all you other Washington correspondents, White House correspondents, next time you're in a briefing room with the president, ask him why, excuse me, Mr. President, why haven't you sent Eric Holder to do investigations and indict some of these bankers that caused the continuing meltdown of the financial system? Huh? How about that? Of course, that question will probably never, but this never get answered. asked, but this, or answered, but this is what moral hazard looks like. This is where you pick winners and you reward people that make mistakes and do what I think is provable criminal activity, and then you have protesters occupying Wall Street. This is what moral hazard looks like. Finally, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, he passed away this week. Sad. I put up on my site, USA Watchdog, his 2005 commencement address at Stanford University. And you know what? Basically, he gave away the secret of his success in that address. And I'll sum it up for you, It's stay hungry, stay foolish, don't be complacent, hang on to your dreams. And finally, do what you love. Good words from a good man. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter from USAWatchdog.com. Thank you for supporting this site.